The September 11 attacks had a seismic impact on the music industry. In this video, we look at 8 artists whose careers were impacted by 9/11. Mariah Carey. Before 9/11, Mariah Carey was one of the biggest pop stars in the world, with a string of record-breaking hits throughout the 1990s. She had established herself as a vocal powerhouse and a certified hitmaker. However, by 2001, her career was beginning to show cracks. She had signed a $100 million deal with Virgin Records, but the pressure of delivering on that contract, coupled with personal struggles, led to her infamous breakdown in July 2001. Her semi-autobiographical film Glitter and its accompanying soundtrack were set to be her next big comeback after a tumultuous period. The release of Glitter and its soundtrack on September 11, 2001 were disastrous. The tragic events of the day overshadowed any promotion or attention the project could have garnered. In a time of national mourning, the project felt out of touch. The album underperformed, debuting on number 7 on the Billboard 200, far below expectations for an artist of her stature. The film was even worse, becoming a commercial and critical flop that damaged her reputation. After the failure of Glitter, Mariah was written off by many as a fading star. She took some time off and slowly started building back up, and by 2005, she staged one of the biggest comebacks in music history with the emancipation of Mimi. Willa Ford. Willa Ford's career was on the rise before 9/11, driven by her provocative debut single, I Wanna Be Bad. The song positioned her as a bold new player in the pop scene, often compared to Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera. Her debut album, Willa Was Here, showed promise, as her edgy image set her apart from other pop princesses of the time. She was gaining traction, with I Wanna Be Bad becoming a modest hit. However, her follow-up single, Did You Understand That?, released in September 2001, faced an uphill battle. The events of 9/11 brought a dramatic shift in the public's mood, with audiences leaning towards comforting and inspirational content rather than her edgy pop vibe. Promotion for her music was effectively ended as radio stations and media outlets changed their programming to match the somber national mood. Without marketing, her sophomore single failed to chart, and her album's momentum fizzled out. After that, Willa's music career never recovered. She shifted her focus to other endeavors, including hosting and acting, but her transition from a rising pop star to obscurity was quick. She even said in interviews that she blamed 9/11 for the failure of her music career. Enya. Before 9/11, Enya had already established herself as the queen of ethereal music. Her 2000 album, A Day Without Rain, was a moderate success, producing singles like Only Time, which charted decently, but didn't create the same buzz as her earlier hits. Enya was a niche artist, beloved by a loyal fan base, but not necessarily a mainstream pop star. Her music was often associated with peace and tranquility. After the tragic events of 9/11, Only Time became an anthem of healing and hope. The song was widely used in tribute videos, memorials, and news coverage, reflecting on the emotional aftermath of the attacks. The single was re-released in 2001, skyrocketing to number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and gaining mainstream success. Enya's music became a symbol of comfort during one of the darkest times in American history, which cemented her legacy. Her sound became almost synonymous with 9/11 for many, which overshadowed her broader discography. While she continued to release albums and maintain her loyal fan base, she could never replicate the level of mainstream attention she got during a sad time. Macy Gray. Before 9/11, Macy Gray was riding high on the success of her breakthrough album, On How Is Life, in 1999, which featured the Grammy-winning single I Try. The song became an anthem of the early 2000s, solidifying her unique voice in neo-soul. Her raspy tone and emotional songwriting earned her critical acclaim and commercial success. She was seen as a rising star, and expectations were high for her sophomore album, The Id, which was scheduled to be released just a week after the events of September 11. However, the tragic attacks cast a long shadow over the music industry, and the album was released in the aftermath on September 17, 2001. It was a sharp left turn from her debut, incorporating a funkier, more experimental sound. Unfortunately, fans weren't in the mood for the album. Additionally, promotional efforts were non-existent as the entertainment industry scaled back public appearances. The album debuted on number 11 on the Billboard 200, selling 93,000 units in its first week, which was considered a flop at the time. The album quickly faded, and Macy struggled to replicate the success of her debut. After 9/11, her career never regained its momentum. While she continued to release music, her albums failed to make a significant commercial impact. She remained a respected artist, but the tragedy altered the trajectory of her career. Enrique Iglesias. Before 9/11, Enrique Iglesias was riding high. As one of the biggest names in Latin pop, his crossover into the English language market with hits like Bailamos, solidifying his status as a global heartthrob. The early 2000s saw him transition from a Latin megastar to mainstream pop royalty. His album Escape, released in 2001, was meant to cement his place among the era's most iconic pop acts. After 9/11, Enrique's song Hero took on a completely different meaning. Originally a love song, its heartfelt lyrics and emotional delivery became a source of comfort for many in the wake of the attacks. The ballad was played at countless memorials and tributes, and became Enrique's defining hit in the US, reaching number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and dominating radio airwaves for months. He even performed the song during the America Tribute to Heroes Telethon, further associating it with the tragedy. However, his post-9/11 success wasn't as sustainable as expected. While Escape performed well commercially, his career in the US began to slow down. His career, much like Enya's, was deeply impacted by the events of 9/11, as his biggest hit became forever linked to the time. He has achieved longevity in the music industry, pivoting in the modern Latin era. Britney Spears. Before 9/11, Britney Spears was at the peak of her career as America's ultimate pop star. Her first 2 albums, Baby One More Time in 1999 and Oops, I Did It Again in 2000, dominated the charts with her infectious pop hits and carefully crafted image, catapulting her to global superstardom. By mid-2001, she was gearing up for her 3rd album, Britney. It was slated to be released in November. The lead single, I'm a Slave for You, was a shift in her sound and image, showing her transition from a teenage star to a more mature artist. The timing of her promotional push collided with the aftermath of 9/11. In a world grappling with grief and uncertainty, the sexual themes of I'm a Slave for You and the album's bold marketing strategy felt out of touch. She got public scrutiny because of that. Despite these challenges, the album debuted on number 1 on the Billboard 200. However, the cultural climate post 9/11 impacted how her music and persona were received. The album didn't really have chart-topping singles, partly because of the tragedy. While she remained a cultural force, her 9/11 era pivot was a weird time in her career. Jay-Z. Jay-Z was already a force in hip-hop before 9/11, but he wasn't really considered as a global icon. On the morning of September 11, 2001, Jay-Z released his 6th studio album, The Blueprint. It was immediately praised as a masterpiece. The album featured hits like Izzo and Song Cry, showcasing his lyrical depth. Its release coincided with one of the darkest days in American history. Despite its unfortunate timing, The Blueprint became a cultural moment. Its impact was amplified by the rise of Kanye West and Just Blaze as super producers who helped craft the sound, thus solidified Jay-Z's status as a visionary in hip-hop. The album debuted on number 1 on the Billboard 200 and is now considered as one of the greatest rap albums of all time. Post 9/11, Jay-Z's career entered a new phase. The Blueprint not only cemented his legacy as one of the greatest rappers of all time, but it also marked the beginning of his transformation into a mogul. Over the years, he diversified his ventures into business and was on his way to becoming a billionaire. The huge success of The Blueprint at a difficult time made him a legend. The Strokes. Before 9/11, The Strokes were meant to become the next big thing in rock music. Their debut album, Is This It?, was released in the UK in July 2001 and was already being hailed as a modern classic. The band was seen as the leaders of the early 2000s rock revival. The US release of the album was scheduled for September 11, 2001, but the attacks altered the band's trajectory. In response, they delayed the US release and removed the track, New York City Cops, from the album's American version because the lyrics were seen as inappropriate at the time. The album eventually dropped in October, and while it still got critical acclaim, the timing reduced its initial impact. Being a band from New York City, The events of 9/11 cast a shadow over their early success. Despite these challenges, the Strokes went on to have a great career, even though their debut album was released in a complicated time. Which artist whose career was impacted by 9/11 did I miss? Tell me in the comments below.